we're going, we don't need roads.
This is your host, Joey Cruel. You are listening to Relentless Flashbackin. In every episode, I will time travel to explore a year, and I'll talk about its historical events, stuff, toys, cars, TV, movies, and music. You'll find Relentless Flashbackin on Mixcloud, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. With this episode, I'll talk about 2009. The zeros were an awful decade. It was a never-ending winter and a never-ending journey through hell. Yes, there was something remarkable. But for sure, 2009 shows how the last 28 years have been heinous and empty. The demon of war never sleeps, and in the last 20 years it's more awake, hungry and angry than ever. If we only talk about wars involving the Western civilization, we are in a state of perpetual war since 1990, with just few months of peace. And this 2009 is a massacre, with 3 ongoing wars. The Second Gulf War is already 6 years old, and it will end only in 2011. The war in Pakistan, which began in 2004, and the war in Afghanistan, which began in 2001, are still here, and they will be still a problem 10 years later in 2019. From 1990 to 2009, in 20 years we have reached more than 60 years of war, pain, death, and destruction. But in the name of what?
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. At this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. Our war on terror begins with Al-Qaeda, but it does not end there. It will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated.
We have a high level of terrorism that affects 34 times the Western soil, with just few untouched nations. Italy, Sweden and Germany are affected with a single attack, but in other countries the situation is different. In Serbia there are 2 attacks, and, perhaps due to the economic crisis, 3 attacks are perpetrated in Greece. In the United States there are 4 attacks, and in Corsica, France, the separatists strike twice. In Ireland, the ceasefire, which continued since 1998, is brutally interrupted by 2 attacks, and 2009 is a black year for Spain, with 17 attacks between January and July. Luckily, most of them cause anything more than damages, but 4 of these attacks cause 3 dead and 69 wounded. The mass shootings and the school shootings sadly are a common problem in USA, and this 2009 is the usual bloodbath. There are 6 school shootings with 3 dead and 6 mass shootings with 55 dead. The deadliest shootings are the Geneva County massacre with 11 dead and the New York Immigration Center shooting with 14 dead. Then there is the Holocaust Memorial Museum shooting. A white supremacist opened fire on the crowd, killing 1 security guard and injuring another. In 2009, the wealth is decreasing more and more, also due to the Great Recession of 2008. And, triggered by this economic situation, the Greek crisis begins, and it will end only in 2018, after years of austerity and misery. Thanks to the Great Recessions, there are problems also in Iceland. The combination between worldwide crisis and wrong laws approved in the last 10 years strikes the Icelandic banks that collapse. The government tries strong solutions after several protests, but it's not enough, so the people are still marching, so they finally surrender and resign. With the new government, the constitution will be rewritten to avoid another crisis, and in 2012 the new version will be approved thanks to a a referendum. After 3 years of hard times, in 2012, Iceland will come out of the crisis with its head held high. A situation completely different from the one the most of the European countries got, since they will suffer the consequences for more years. In 2009, the G20 agrees to join forces, so the Great Recession of 2008 will not happen again, and it's all talk and no action. Earthquakes certainly aren't a sign of a dark age, but the consequences are a clear clue. A regulated and earthquake-proof nation can deal with an earthquake. An uncontrolled nation ruled by criminals instead collapses. In spite of boastful proclaims about progress, in 2009 in Italy you can still die for a 6-degree earthquake. The earthquake that takes place in L'Aquila causes 309 dead, more than 1,500 wounded, and damages for 16 billion. An earthquake so deadly in Italy hadn't occurred since 1980. A 6-degree earthquake in a nation that considers itself advanced doesn't kill you. Franco Barberi, the creator of a Major Risks Commission, well summarized this situation. In California, an earthquake like this one wouldn't have killed a single person. And let's notice that nothing will be done to avoid such heavy consequences for another earthquake. This earthquake isn't a sudden tragedy, it's just another state massacre. In 2009, a cultural revolution takes place. Barack Obama is the first African American to become President of the United States of America. There are many hopes for a change, but in 8 years, almost nothing will change. On 15 of January, the flight 1549 leaves New York's LaGuardia Airport at 3:24 p.m. But at 3:27 p.m. it strikes a flock of geese and all the engines aren't working anymore. Commander Sullenberg realizes he can go back and that he can only try to land on the Hudson River. And with a brave and professional ditching, the pilots save the day. All the passengers are safe, and of course Sullenberg is the last to leave the plane when the freezing water begin to submerge the plane. Unfortunately, to avoid other tragedies, more than 1,200 geese will be captured and killed. Also in this year, the Kepler Space Telescope is launched to find Earth-sized planets outside the solar system, and it will end its mission in 2018. In 2009, there is the sudden death of Michael Jackson. You can't like his private life, or maybe you can't like his music, but his cultural impact in the 80s and in the following years is undeniable. Of course, his death is closely related to his overexposure that gave him a demigod status, pushed him away from reality and made him too fragile. Another piece from the 80s that disappears, another empty seat that will not be filled. Since the witch hunt of the 90s was over, more people began to realize how much we lost by rejecting the 80s and began to recover their attitude. In 2009 there is a new kind of electronic music, both inspired by 80s pop and score from the 80s, those signed by John Carpenter, Evangelos Vangelis, Harold Fatmeyer and Jan Hammer. The genre is called synthwave or outrun, and using synths it recreates the exciting 80s atmosphere. Just listen to this music while night driving to return to the golden age, because many of the songs sound like a perfect soundtrack from an 80s movie. The crowd will notice the genre in 2011, when the Blick movie Drive will include some Kavinsky songs. The final consecration will take place in 2015 with the soundtrack of the masterpiece Kung Fury and with the documentary Rise of the Synth that will be released soon. One of the best albums of 2009 is the return of Creator after 4 years with Hordes of Chaos. After all these years, they aren't disappointing. Creator has no mercy, and the band, with 10 ultra-lethal tracks, shake us like an earthquake. Hordes of Chaos is a masterpiece that continues the new life of Creator that after some disappointing albums reconquered the throne in 2001, and with this album they confirm their presence in their quadrilateral stronghold of Teutonic thrash metal, along with Destruction, Sodom and Tankard. The album will be released again in 2010 again as a boxed version called Ultra Riot Edition, with a second CD featuring demos and 2 covers: Allen Gigan Allen by Slime, a German punk band, and You're the Government by Bad Religion, an American punk band. It's interesting, but I suggest to buy the DVD edition of the original release, that contains a making-of the album and some music videos. Be careful that there are 2 versions, and in one there is only the making-of. To bring us back to the glory days, the album was recorded live, with very few overdubs, and of course it's an analog recording, and now it is created with workers. In this section I will talk about the stuff from 2009. The Jolt Cola, that debuted in 1985, is discontinued, but it will return in 2017. In 2009, KB Toys and Toys R Us are the largest toys stores in America. KB Toys was founded in 1922 as a wholesale candy store. Then, in 1948, decided to focus entirely on the toy industry. Retail sales began in the 70s under the name KB Toy & Hobby. In the year 2000, KB Toys was purchased by Bain Capital, a faceless corporation that bought it for the sole purpose of bleeding them dry, running them out of business and earning a large profit. Toys R Us acquires the remains of KB Toys, and then Bain Capital will kill also Toys R Us in 2018. As always, thank you, Dystopian Age! But there is a good news. This year there is the release of the Ghostbusters video game, and it's a masterpiece. The game's plot is set 2 years after Ghostbusters 2, around the Thanksgiving in 1991, and every detail is perfect. There are the voices of the majority of the original actors, and the screenplay is exactly what you need from a Ghostbusters movie, thanks to the help of Aykroyd and Ramis. In fact, this can be considered a third movie, since it's a pleasure just following the story, also thanks to its cinematic feeling. On YouTube there are several videos that are assembled using the gameplay that are like a movie. Thanks to the 80s, there is something that you can enjoy even in this sad 2009. Stevie James is a talented British singer that was active since the early 80s. Then, in 84, he joined Tiger Tales, and with the release of the first album, Young and Crazy, in 1987, everything seemed to go in the right direction. Unfortunately, troubles rose, and the singer was replaced by Kim Hooker. Stevie, as many artists from the 80s, faced the hard times without giving up and tried to reborn as a solo artist, but everything abruptly ended thanks to the music apocalypse of 1991. All the songs recorded by Stevie from 1982 to 1994 were collected in a stunning CD in the year 2000, titled Damned If I Do, Damned If I Don't. In 2009, Stevie comes back with an incredible masterpiece, My Private Hell, pure 80s glam metal with a modern Swedish flavor. After the weekend, it's a pleasure to have Stevie still ready to rock. And now here is the spectacular Still Crazy! In this section I'll talk about TV. From 1993, The Late Show with David Letterman continues, and from 1999, The Jon Stewart Daily Show continues too. The NBC Late Show is in turmoil. In this year, Jay Leno moves to The Jay Leno Show at 10:30 p.m., the talk show that starts the late evening on NBC. So in June, Conan O'Brien moves from the midnight slot of The Late Night with Conan O'Brien to the one at 11:30 p.m. of The Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien, a normal change that instead will lead to the second late night war, in which Jay Leno will be again shadowed by bad publicity. The Saturday Night Live ends its 34th and begins the 35th season, and to be gentle, they are both really lame, with few exceptions, so few that I can list them all here. In both seasons, there is the recurring sketch Game Time, that every time is fun funny thanks to either performance. In the 34th season, there is the debate with Sarah Palin and Joe Biden, La Policía Mexicana, Dateline, A Girlfriend Voice. Then there is the recurring sketch with Forte and Sudeikis about a Bon Jovi cover band called John Bovi that sing the opposite of the original lyrics. It's interesting to see that the chosen songs are Wanted Dead or Alive and Living on a Prayer from Slippery When Wet, released in 1986, and Bad Medicine from New Jersey, released in 1988. Even they know there is no Bon Jovi after 1991. In the 35th season, there is the sketch really harsh toward the Obama administration with Sudeikis as Joe Biden, and then the one about Tiger Woods, and finally Gossip Girl Staten Island. If you have a bad day, you wanna watch something funny, but most of the time watching SNL means becoming sadder. Moreover, the comedians don't look at each other, but they stare off screen to read the cue cards. And it's really distracting. It's such a pity, because there are good comedians like Bill Hader, Jason Sudeikis or Kenan Thompson, but it's not enough.
The most tragic death is the death of the American dream. Say goodbye to your loved ones and enjoy 2009, because 2010 is going to be a bloodbath.
In 2009, 2 TV series are cancelled without an ending. My Name is Earl, that resisted since 2005, and Sarah Connor Chronicles, a spin-off from the 1984 masterpiece Terminator, which debuted in 2008 and manages to reach only the second season. If there is something good, it will be cancelled. That's the rule in this swamp of sadness. As always, thank you, Dystopian Age! If I have to talk about a new TV series in 2009, there is nothing exciting, warm or edifying. The nothing dominates the world. Raven are one of the best bands from new wave of British heavy metal of the early 80s, and they represent the sharper and louder side of the movement, and they are still a trio. While with the two brothers John and Mark Gallagher, there is now Joe Hasselbander, who replaced in 1987 the wild drummer Rob Hunter. In spite of being one of the bands that influenced the 80s thrash metal bands, and in spite of the release of 3 masterpieces between 1981 and 1983, they brought them close to the success, something went wrong, and they lost the right moment to be famous. But they didn't lost hope. So in 1987 they were back on track, but the 1991 music apocalypse slowed them again. In the year 2000, a wall collapsed and shattered the legs of Mark Gallagher, the guitar player, so the band went on hiatus from 2001 to 2004, but they never surrendered. So after 9 years, here comes Walk Through Fire. The title says all. In spite of all the troubles, they can walk through fire to play their music. The artwork of the cover resembles the one used for Everything Louder, released in 1997, and it's a sign that the music will still have the Raven sound, and it's an extraordinary album. It's another masterpiece, exactly what we want from Raven. With this album the episode ends. In the next episode I'll talk about toys, cars and TV from 2009. Please subscribe to the channel and follow the show on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. If you want to give your support, please visit Patreon, and remember that you can find a t-shirt for every year on Teespring. Relentless Flashbackin is easy to find, because the name is unique all over the web. And now, from Walk Through Fire, here is Raven with Against the Grain. Stay outrageous, stay larger than life. Romeo, Foxtrot, Bravo!